This video is brought to you by PrizePicks. Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to Hot Takes, a show where I take your comments from over the week, your hot takes, your informative takes, your cold takes, your medium warm takes, and your good takes, bad takes, all the takes. I read them throughout the week. I select some comments that I find interesting or I want to discuss further, and I interact with them in video format. So this is your chance to interact with me, or my chance, really, to interact with you. So let's jump into it. We're going to start with the first comment from Shocker Radio, who says this: speaking of Jeudy, I watched the 2025 season finale again last week. Without his catches on the final drive, the Browns lose that game against the Bengals. I would have to go back and check, but here's the thing with Jerry Jeudy, right? He falls into that category of players that fans love to hate. And when a player falls into that category, fans will blame that player for anything that goes wrong that person happens to be in the vicinity of, regardless of if that player is responsible for that play or not. Right. I think Jerry Jeudy, especially, like the Sanders people don't like him a lot because of the whole video of him arguing with Shedeur, which I'm just going to put this out there. If you're a Sanders fan and maybe you haven't watched the NFL closely before, if you think that Shedeur is the type of quarterback that have a 12, 15-year career and, be a high-level player, you're going to have to get used to stuff like that. That stuff's going to happen. It happened to Tom Brady. It happened to Peyton Manning all the time. Players that Peyton Manning loves. Best friends. Jeff Saturday, he got into a fight with on the sideline, right? You can't overreact to every argument that you see on the football field. The sidelines of a football field are a very emotional place. And guys, sometimes they let it out, they get mad, and it's not that big of a deal, right? You can have an argument with somebody, it's not that big of a deal. But Jerry Jeudy was the first guy to get into an argument with Shedeur Sanders, because Shedeur, I think that was the San Francisco game. Shedeur was not seeing Jerry Jeudy when he was open, right? Like, that was objectively happening. I watched the film of that game, and I remember pointing it out. Like, I understand why Jerry Jeudy was upset. He was wide open in a lot of different spots. And I know it wasn't the San Francisco game. I think it was the Chicago game. It was the game before the San Francisco game. But I remember that being a game where I'm like, I could get why Jerry Jeudy's frustrated. Now, where Jerry Jeudy has to understand is that he's the veteran. He wanted to be in a leadership position last year. You cannot do that if that's what you're trying to do, right? You got to have some more tact about how you go about things, especially when the quarterback is a rookie. So that whole incident kind of made Jerry Jeudy a lot of enemies. And it's not like Jerry Jeudy is somebody who makes it hard for him to have enemies, right? He's kind of taken up the mantle for Jed Wills as the Browns player that Browns fans just love to shit on. But all of that being said, understanding why people feel the way about Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy is still a very, very talented player that if you're the Cleveland Browns or you're either directly or indirectly rooting for the Browns' success, you need this guy to be successful in order for the Browns to reach their goals. Like, Jerry Jeudy's got to be a big part of what this team does in 2025. Because he's an immensely talented player. I mean, he had 1,200 yards in 2024, his first year in Cleveland. He almost had like 500 yards in that one game against the Denver Broncos. You can't dismiss a player like that or just throw a player like that to the side, as frustrating as they may be. You're going to need Jerry Jeudy at some point. Like, that guy is talented enough to where you're going to need him during the season. With the additions that you made to the wide receiver room, are you going to need him to get you 1,200 yards, 1,500. No, that's not the ask for Jerry Jeudy. But you're still going to need Jerry Jeudy, because if you don't have Jerry Jeudy, this wide receiver room is not nearly enough to be successful in the NFL. Jerry Jeudy is a huge part to your success. So you're going to need that guy at some point this season. And that's the thing. I try to stay out of it. I understand why certain players aren't likable, but I try to keep my opinion about players to the tape, right? Even if I don't like a player, which there's been plenty of players that I am not fond of personally, that I will advocate for their place on the team because they made a argument that's undeniable on the field, and that's the thing with Jerry Jeudy. As much as I might be turned off by his antics and general attitude and body language, I have to understand that his talent and his ability to get open is something that this team needs, because he still can get open. He got open a lot last year, just didn't get the ball, suffered by bad quarterback play, dropped the ball a ton too, right? And that's frustrating. But we're going to need Jerry Jeudy to be better, and Jerry Jeudy's going to need the quarterback play to be better in order to be successful. And we're just going to have to work together that way. You know what I mean? All right. Lil Mark the Kid says this. The money argument, this is talking about Deshaun Watson, is almost giving Sanders a cop-out, because if it's about the money, then Sanders and crew can say he never had a chance. Sanders needs to win. I want him to win, but he needs to prove to everybody in Cleveland that he's willing to fight hard to win the job. I don't think he needs to prove to us that he's willing to fight hard. I'm pretty sure he's willing to fight hard. He needs to prove to us that he can win the job. You know what I mean? Like, that's really it. And look, if he doesn't win the job, I'm sure people who are fans of Shedeur, who don't understand why he didn't win the job, will certainly say the money is the reason that he didn't win the job and use that as cope. But we're all going to know that's cope, right? Shedeur has to win the job. That's it. You know what I mean? That he has to go out there and make an argument with his play during camp that he is better than Deshaun Watson. Depending on where you think about Deshaun Watson, that determines how difficult of a task you think that is. But in order for him to start, he needs to go out there and make the argument in the meeting rooms, in how he shows up, and how he handles the team, and how he goes out there and practice, how he goes out there during the preseason, and if he gets an opportunity during the regular season, that he is the best quarterback option on this team. That's what he needs to go out there and do. The job can be won. The Browns owe this job to nobody. They have no obligations to anybody. Deshaun Watson's not under contract after this year. Their obligation to him is over. They have no reason to play him, right? Dylan Gabriel, there's no obligation to him. Taylor Green, there's no obligation to start Taylor Green this year. So if Shedeur wants the job, it's there to be had, right? He can win it. If he can't win it, then he can't win it. And he's going to have to wait for his next opportunity, which may or may not be in Cleveland, But that's really it. He has to win the job if he wants the job. I'm 100% sure he's willing to fight and willing to play and do all the hard work that it takes to win the job. But that's not going to be what determines it. Is he good enough to take the job? That's what we're going to find out, right? And that's what a quarterback competition is there to find out. The next question comes from Mandel Harvey, who says this. Quincy, Deshaun Watson is functionally Joe Burrow. Okay. I'm going to read this one real slow so I make sure I'm not misinterpreting anything. Deshaun Watson is functionally Joe Burrow. The Browns have made the playoffs more than Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. Is that technically true? The Bengals made the playoffs since 2020. The Bengals made the playoffs in 2021, 22. And is that it? And the Browns made the playoffs 2 times. So I think this claim is a little off, because at most they've made the playoffs the same amount of times. Let's not factor in the fact that Cincinnati got to a Super Bowl one year and then the conference championship next year. But we'll revisit all this at the beginning of this. The Browns have made the playoffs more than Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, which I don't think is true. Joe Burrow is being kept. He'll be paid a king's ransom and will probably not be healthy enough for the Bengals to make the playoffs. The Bengals rely on Burrow. The Browns aren't relying on Watson. The Browns have a more likely path to a Super Bowl than the Bengals. I'm going to read that one more time because I got to be tripping. Deshaun Watson is functionally Joe Burrow. The Browns have made the playoffs more than Joe in Cincinnati. Joe Burrow is being kept. He'll be paid a king's ransom and will probably not be healthy enough to win enough games for the Bengals to make the playoffs. The Bengals rely on Burrow. The Browns aren't relying on Watson. The Browns have a more likely path to the Super Bowl than are you saying that Joe Burrow and Deshaun Watson are the same thing? I would have to assume, because you then go on to say that the reason you think the Browns are going to be better than the Bengals is because the Browns have more around Watson than the Bengals have around Burrow, which that sentence there implies that Joe Burrow and Deshaun Watson are the same thing. I want to know who are the three people who like that. Like, who are y'all? I need y'all to raise y'all hand. Y'all saw somebody say straight up Deshaun Watson is Joe Burrow and ran with it. I don't even know if I want to title this video after this hot take, because this is certainly the hot take that I should title a video. But I don't know how to label this hot take in a title in a video format in a way that won't make people think that I think this shit. Okay? What? Bro. One more time. Deshaun Watson is functionally Joe Burrow. The Browns have made the playoffs more than Joe. That's not true. Joe Burrow's being kept. Yeah, Joe Burrow. He's a good quarterback. He'll be paid a king's ransom. He'll probably not be healthy enough. Maybe the argument here is for the future. Like, the Browns have a better chance over the next 10 years to win a Super Bowl than Cincinnati because Joe's going to get paid a lot of money. But why include Deshaun Watson in that? Like, including Deshaun Watson forces me to go to a place where I'm comparing Deshaun Watson to Joe Burrow. And that, I'm sorry. I know, I think you're probably a listener, and you're probably somebody who I appreciate at the end of the day. But I'm just going to tell you right now, that comp is bat insane. That is crazy. That is a what? I don't know what to do with that. Again, if you want to say the Browns have a better chance over the next 10 years to win the Super Bowl than the Bengals because Joe Burrow is going to get expensive and more injury prone, and the Browns will find a quarterback that can get them to that place within the next 10 years. That's not crazy. That's not, I don't know how likely it is, but it's not crazy. But if you're making the argument that the Browns are more likely to do it because they have Deshaun Watson and you think Deshaun Watson is just as good as Joe Burrow, well, that's just, that's insane. Will I make this the thumbnail and the title of this video? You will know by the time you click on it. Holy, wow. That one woke me up. All right. The next one comes from DC. Let's see if you can top that one. I'm a huge football fan, but I primarily follow the Cleveland Browns from an organizational, developmental, and transformational leadership perspective. You get a new coach, leader. Right now, everybody is in the honeymoon period. Everything changes when the snaps are live. I agree. It's his first time as head coach, and it's a new staff, so you can expect they'll make big mistakes as they try to reach what is called a steady state. It's harder to get there when your quarterback isn't settled, and that is the area that's getting the most attention. If whoever he chooses doesn't win, it will cause a bigger media circus. Looking forward to seeing how he manages it all. I don't know if Todd is coming into this really choosing. Well, he's going to choose somebody to start, right? But I think if you're looking at how Todd's going to manage this, let's say he goes with Deshaun Watson, and Deshaun does what Deshaun has done in Cleveland, which is disappoint. And then he has to go to Shedeur, and let's say Shedeur wins. Ultimately, he'll be fine as far as managing that situation because he'll be winning games if that's the case. Now, if he goes to Deshaun and Deshaun loses, and then he goes to Shedeur and Shedeur loses, then they're both losers. You see what I mean? Like, if he picks the one and he picks Deshaun and Deshaun wins games, then he's going to come out looking great. If he picks Shedeur and Shedeur wins games, then he's going to come out looking great. If he picks Shedeur looks bad, and then puts Deshaun in and he starts winning games, well, he's winning games, so he's going to be fine. You know what I mean? I don't think anybody outside the bubble of like the diehard fans who've been arguing on both sides of this quarterback competition, outside of that bubble, everybody kind of understands that the Browns quarterback situation is kind of FUBAR, right? So nobody's going to be mad if he picks the wrong person. You know what I mean? It's just like always online diehard stands that are going to get in a tizzy about this. But like actual people think more like most people who watch these videos, myself, we kind of know this quarterback situation is not great. So whatever he does, if you can get a situation to work out, cool. If nothing works out, well, you're not really to blame. Like, we know that this quarterback competition is between two bad options right now, or two not so great options. So I don't know. I think we're overemphasizing the quarterback position just because of the name value that's involved in it. On one hand, you have former, top quarterback Deshaun Watson. And then on the other hand, you have Shedeur Sanders, who's a big name in his own right, but also related to Deion Sanders. So that brings a ton of attention and intrigue. But we know what Shedeur looked like last year. It wasn't great. We know what Deshaun has looked like recently. It hasn't been great. Am I really going to have any expectations that Todd Monken should work some magic with any of these quarterbacks and fix the room automatically? Is that a reasonable expectation? I think the only reasonable expectation for people to have is to accept that the quarterback play is just not going to be that good this year. You know what I mean? I don't think anybody's expecting franchise level or even good level quarterback play outside of the bubbles of stands that are arguing about this quarterback competition. Like, yeah, Shedeur fans, they think they're going to have great quarterback play because they think Shedeur's a great quarterback. There's some Deshaun stands left who still think Deshaun's going to provide high-level quarterback play. And sure, they're going to expect it, but most people aren't those people. You know what I mean? Most people are outside of that. Even like the Sanders fan base, not everybody in that fan base that's rooting for Shedeur is a stan. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think Todd, he's going to be fine no matter what happens at quarterback this year. If they get good quarterback play, then he's a genius. His offense fixed it. If they get bad quarterback play, well, that's what everybody expected. It's a zero-sum game. The area where Todd's going to be judged at the most isn't quarterback. I think that's the area where there'll be most media attention to, but most people will understand, well, what you going to do there, right? The area where Todd's going to be judged is the run game. If the run game's improved, then his seat's not going to be hot. If the run game's not improved, then his seat's going to be pretty hot. Next question comes from Garreau, who says this: I didn't mind Kevin's quiet professionalism, though I know it's frustrating a lot of people because he wouldn't say much of anything. I also don't mind the fact that Todd Monken seems more off the cuff. What matters to me really is, can he win? Being more casual and off the cuff is fine until you're losing. Yeah, then it becomes a joke, a clown show. In Kevin's case, being tight-lipped made people project whatever they wanted onto him. Since he wasn't saying it himself, he's not in control of the team. He hates Shador. He's racist, whatever the narrative is. I don't think it makes a difference in either case. People will scrutinize the coach after a loss no matter what. And everyone loves you when you're winning, no matter who you are and how you are. That's just the reality of how this works. 100% agree with this, right? That is kind of what happens, right? With Kevin, his way of handling the media after a loss started to become a pattern because the team kept losing, right? So now the things that he's saying in the press conferences, it's not just stuff that he's saying, it's he's losing and he keeps saying this. This is what I associate with losing, right? We talked about this with Hugh Jackson. Hugh saying, I got to go look at the tape, wasn't something that was crazy, and that's why it became a meme. It's because the Browns lost 31 games in 2 years, and every time they lost, Hugh talking about looking at the tape. You know what I mean? Like, it became associated with the losing. So whatever you do, however you handle the media, if you don't win games, that's going to get associated with losing. And people can like it now. It can be refreshing, but say the wrong thing after a loss, and all of a sudden it's not refreshing anymore, right? All of a sudden now it's arrogant, or however people want to paint it. So we'll see. I hope Todd's successful so we don't have to have this conversation, but that is something that certainly can happen. Thank you for that comment. We're going to get to more, but first I got to thank my sponsor, PrizePicks. Hey, let me talk to you about my sponsor for this year, PrizePicks. It's a fun way to win cash while you're watching your favorite teams. Forget complex betting rules. Their app is designed to be incredibly easy to use. Just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. Speaking of, here are my picks for this upcoming NFL season. They have Myles Garrett at 14 sacks here. I think he will get more than 14 sacks. Joe Burrow at 3,875 passing yards. I think he'll be a 4,000-yard passer. I'm going to go with more. They have Derrick Henry at 1,224 yards. I'm going to go less than that. Check to see if PrizePicks is available in your state. You can follow me on the app at KWEN_C to see all of my lineups. Download the PrizePicks app today. Play $5 and get $50 in lineups when you download the app using the link in the description. Another comment from Garreau, who has a comment on the Brendan Sorsby situation. Let's hear what he says here. Honestly, don't care about the gambling. He did. I mean, I really feel like that should be nothing on him. He's a legal adult and has no bearing on the stakes. Like, who gives a crap if he bet on Nathan's hot dog contest or Romanian soccer? The damning part is that he bet on his own team while he was a member of it. It's highly problematic. Now, to be fair to Brendan Sorsby, this was something that he allegedly did when he was a redshirt freshman for the Indiana Hoosiers. So we're talking about 18 years old versus a 22-year-old at this point in his life, right? And we're talking about it being when he's not an active part of the game day experience for the football team, which is a little different, right? If he were the starting quarterback and he had set a bet on his team in any way, shape, or form, red flag, I'm out, right? Like, I'm out there. Him doing it as a redshirt freshman at Indiana, it's still a red flag, but there's enough room for growth and learning there that I can be less concerned about that, right? If it were while he was a starting quarterback and he's betting on himself to win or lose, he's not going to play football again, right? But redshirt freshman, you're talking about him basically fresh out of high school. He's a redshirt. He's not playing in the games. Maybe he was stupid enough to think that meant he could bet on it, or he would get away with it, and he did not, right? If that is the only instance that he had, then okay. You know what I mean? Not really going to trip on that. Definitely think he should be monitored, but not going to trip on that. Everything else, it sounds crazy when you hear it, but it's not against the rules. Like, yeah, dude, is it weird that he's betting on Romanian soccer and Turkish baseball? And does that concern you that can leak onto other things? Yes. But the NFL rules state very clearly, you are allowed to gamble on sports as an NFL player. You just can't gamble on the NFL. And if he has to bet on Turkish basketball and baseball to not bet on football, okay, whatever. It's not that big of a deal, right? So, yeah, that's the thing. Is the incident his redshirt freshman year at Indiana the only instance of that happening where he bet on the team that he was on? Are there instances where he's betting on other college football games? Are there instances where he's betting on more of his team's college? That's the stuff where I'm like, okay, if that pops up, I'm done. Okay, I can't get involved. But if it's just that one instance and then a bunch of other, albeit frequent, but irrelevant bets, then fine, But that's really what I'm looking for. The next comment comes from Tracy about Brendan Sorsby as well. Tracy says this: are Browns fans so desperate for any quarterback option that we want to take a risk on Sorsby when we can simply ride out the season with Shedeur Sanders and see what we have, then go into the 2027 class and take a shot at a clean, high-character quarterback if Sanders ain't the guy? Well, here's the problem with that hypothetical, Tracy, right? If it works out like that if the Browns could today say to themselves, in May 28th, 2026, if they could guarantee that they're going to be in a position next year in the draft to take a quarterback that has high character and they like, then yeah, that's obviously the route that the Browns would go. But the problem with that hypothetical is it's assuming that that's going to be the case, when that's not a very likely outcome, right? It's likely that the Browns could be picking outside the range to get a quarterback, or the quarterbacks that are available, they don't necessarily have the greatest read on, or the greatest character grade on, or the greatest on-field grade for that can justify a first-round pick. So, yeah, if it happens in that perfect little vacuum, then what you said makes sense. But anything outside of it, then it starts to make less sense. So, no, I don't think the Browns can really afford to do that. They're building a kind of team that can win games, maybe even if the quarterback play isn't amazing. So the idea that the Browns would still have a quarterback need but might be picking in the high teens or something like that, that's not unlikely for this football team. That's where they want to be. So if you're looking at this from the Browns perspective, right, and you think you built yourself a run game, you built yourself a defense, a special teams that can win and drag the quarterback position to 9 wins, then you're talking about picking 19th, 20th, maybe even making the playoffs and picking later. And the odds of there being a quarterback with high character that you love available in the first round at that late of a pick is not very high. So you see somebody like Brendan Sorsby, and well, that matches your timeline because you can draft Brendan Sorsby, use a 3rd or 4th round pick on him. It's not even a premium asset like you would next year where it's a 1st round pick. And also, you don't have to play him right away. You could say to yourself, we're going to give Brendan Sorsby a redshirt year. They're going to use this year to see what happens with Shedeur or Deshaun Watson, and then we'll give 2027 over to Sorsby. So, yeah, I think it does make a lot of sense. In every scenario that people put out, if the Browns have a high grade on Brendan Sorsby, and they dig around on this character stuff and they don't find it to be a high risk for character issues, then why not pull the trigger? You know what I mean? I don't see the risk is not that high on him, right? Especially when you consider, like, no, it's not going to be a first round supplemental draft pick. That's not what's going to happen. At most a second, more than likely a third or a fourth. So if you're able to get him at that price, why not? I don't really see the reason to not do it. If you have a high grade on him and you're not scared off by the character stuff, if your research comes back as you like this guy's character, you think he could be an asset to this team, then why not? What's stopping you? There's really nothing stopping you at this point. And we could talk about 2027 and the Browns draft position. You're not giving up your first round pick next year. So if you fall into a situation where you could just draft Arch Manning or Dante Moore, then you can do that too. You know what I mean? It doesn't prohibit you from doing anything that you mentioned there, even giving Sanders a chance. So, yeah, I think the Browns should definitely at least consider this, look into it, and see if it makes sense for them. And if it does, why not bid a third or a fourth round pick? What's really the downside in doing that? You know what I mean? Garreau, who's hitting home runs this week, he got a bunch of my comments here. He commented on Mike Hall. I hope for Hall's sake, it's just a nothing burger. Always hate hearing about young guys having injury concerns. This is just to update us about the Mike Hall situation. Apparently, it's not a big deal. No structural damage. They think Mike Hall is fine. So they took him out for practice to be precautious, but they think Mike Hall is going to be fine. JDA says this: NFL QB should look borderline elite in 7-on-7s. Anything less than that is concerning because there's only more aspects of the game that can be processed beyond 7-on-7. So if a quarterback is showing signs of struggling on 7-on-7s, what gives you faith is that they would thrive beyond. What gives you faith that they would be able to thrive beyond the limited, easier style of gameplay at practice? So I 3/4 agree with this, right? I think 7-on-7s are an environment where it's easier for the quarterback to be successful. I don't think that everybody should look elite in 7-on-7s. Like, these corners are still very good. These safeties are still very good in the NFL. These linebackers are still very good. It's not like throwing on air, right? Like, there is some resistance there. There's just not a pass rush. Here's what I will say. You should be, if you're an NFL quarterback, especially if you're not a rookie but a veteran quarterback, you should be able to always look competent in 7-on-7s. It should never look like you don't know what you're doing on 7-on-7s. And here's my big pet peeve about 7-on-7s. You should be able to get the goddamn ball out under 3 seconds. I don't want to see any scrambling on 7-on-7s, any running around trying to find. I don't want to see any of that on 7-on-7s. I want to see you process, get the ball out in 3 seconds or less. You know what I mean? You should be able to do that if you're a veteran quarterback and you're playing 7-on-7s. Elite means like ball placement and arm talent. Not everybody going to look elite in 7-on-7s. But you should be able to look competent in 7-on-7s. You know what I mean? And that's what Todd Monken was talking about. Again, he wants his quarterbacks to look competent, and in his opinion, throwing interceptions is not competent in 7-on-7s. But that's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'm pretty certain there will be some thoughts down there. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.